The camera fades in on the cold shine of a courtroom floor. A gavel rests quietly, untouched, as whispers ripple through the audience. Christine's eyes are red but defiant, Robyn clutching her hands, her lips trembling. And at the center of it all sits Kody Brown, pale, unshaven, and silent for once. The judge leans forward, her voice slices through the heavy air. Mr. Brown, you are accused of defrauding your own family trust and emotionally coercing your wives for financial control. How do you plead? Kody's jaw tightens. The whole courtroom waits for his answer. But before he can utter a word, Meri rises, tear-streaked, and says, Your Honor, I have evidence that changes everything. Gasps erupt. The camera pans to Kody's face, drained of color, and right that the courtroom lights hum faintly, casting a sterile glow across rows of tense faces. The air feels heavier than it should, as if the truth itself is waiting to be set free. Kody Brown sits rigid, eyes darting between his wives, or rather, the women who once called themselves that. Christine, calm but fierce, keeps her gaze fixed on the prosecution table. Robyn looks broken, whispering silent prayers under her breath. Meri sits at the far end, detached but observant, her expression unreadable. Janelle, ever pragmatic, crosses her arms, trying to keep her emotions in check. The bailiff announces, All rise, and Judge Harris enters, sharp, composed, the kind of woman who has seen it all but never quite this. The gavel strikes. Court is now in session. The state versus Kody Brown. The sound echoes through the room like a countdown. The prosecutor, a woman named Olivia Kent, stands confidently. Her tone is calm, but every word lands like a hammer. Your Honor, this is not merely a case about money. It's about manipulation, betrayal, and the systematic emotional control of 4 women who trusted one man, a man who used love as leverage. Kody's lawyer, a polished man named Ethan Cross, rises. Objection, Your Honor. Prejudicial. Sustained, Judge Harris says, but even she can't hide the flicker of intrigue in her eyes. Olivia continues, Over the course of this trial, you'll hear testimonies, see financial records, and learn how a man who preached family unity allegedly siphoned nearly $500,000 from a shared family trust, all while isolating those closest to him. The camera cuts to the wives. Christine looks like she's holding her breath. Janelle's jaw tightens. Robyn's eyes flicker with fear. Meri, though still, seems ready for war. It's not just a trial anymore. That's payback for every lie that ever broke their bond. Kody's lawyer straightens his tie. Your Honor, my client has nothing to hide. This is not a tale of betrayal. It's the unraveling of a family under media pressure and heartbreak. Mr. Brown acted well within his rights. As head of household, Christine lets out a soft, bitter laugh that cuts through the silence. The judge glances her way but says nothing. Olivia approaches the witness stand. The prosecution calls Christine Brown. She walks slowly to the stand, her heels clicking in a rhythm that matches her heartbeat. She takes the oath, voice trembling slightly as she says, I do. Olivia begins gently. Christine, how long were you married to Kody Brown? Over 25 years, Christine says, voice steady but thick with pain. We built everything together. The houses, the family fund, the show, everything. And did you have equal access to the family's financial accounts? Christine hesitates, looking toward Kody. Not after 2018. That's when he changed the passwords. A low murmur ripples through the audience. Did you give him permission to transfer money from the trust into private accounts? No, she says, her tone sharp now. He said it was for family expenses, but then the funds were gone. And when I asked where they went, he said, you wouldn't understand the bigger picture. Kody shifts in his chair, muttering under his breath. The judge eyes him sternly. Mr. Brown, control yourself. Christine looks directly at him now. He always talked about unity. But what he meant was control. We lived under rules he made up, rules that only served him. Olivia lets the silence hang for a moment before saying softly, Christine, what was the breaking point? Christine exhales shakily. When he told me love is conditional, that obedience was proof of loyalty. That's when I realized I wasn't a wife. I was an asset. The courtroom falls utterly still. Even Robyn covers her mouth, fighting back tears. Sometimes the truth doesn't destroy people. It sets them free, one painful confession at a time. Ethan rises quickly for cross-examination. Christine, would you agree you voluntarily entered into this plural marriage? Yes. And you benefited financially from the show, correct? We all did, she says cautiously. So, isn't it fair to say that money moved around for business reasons you might not have understood? Maybe, she says, but her eyes harden. But when a man uses faith and family as shields, it stops being business. Ethan smirks slightly, sensing weakness. Mrs. Brown, is it possible your resentment after your separation clouds your judgment? Christine leans forward. I didn't come here to be judged for leaving. I came here because truth doesn't need permission. A few quiet gasps. The judge gives a subtle nod. Not approval, but acknowledgement. Olivia smirks, knowing Christine just won around without even trying. The judge calls for a short recess. The wives retreat to separate corners of the courthouse, the tension still vibrating through the walls. In the hallway, Janelle confronts Kody. You had to know this day was coming. He scoffs. You're all just angry because you lost control of the narrative. No, Janelle fires back. You lost control when you started believing your own lies. His jaw clenches, his voice low. Everything I did to protect this family. From what? She asks bitterly. From the truth? Before he can respond, Robyn walks up, her voice trembling. Please stop. The more we fight, the worse it looks. Looks? Christine's voice cuts in from behind them. You're still worried about appearances? Robyn's tears spill over. You don't understand, Christine. He's not just my husband. He's my faith. The line hangs like smoke in the air. Christine shakes her head slowly. And that's why you'll never see him for what he really is. The closer they get to the truth, the uglier love begins to look. When court resumes, Olivia brings out new evidence. Bank statements showing transfers from the family trust into a private account under Kody's name, marked consulting fees. Ethan objects again. Your Honor, this evidence is incomplete and speculative. Overruled, the judge says. Let's hear the rest. Olivia turns to the court. We also have testimony from a financial advisor who was told to funnel funds discreetly to avoid domestic disputes. Kody's head drops slightly. For a brief moment, his mask slips. Guilt flashes across his face. The audience murmurs again. Meri finally speaks up, standing in her seat. Your Honor, I was there when he signed the paperwork. Everyone turns. Even the judge looks surprised. Mrs. Brown, you'll have your turn. Judge Harris warns. Meri ignores her. He said it was for a business investment. But I saw the checks. It wasn't business. It was hush money. The courtroom erupts in whispers and Kody finally snaps. You think you know everything, Meri? You never understood what it meant to carry this family. She looks at him coldly. And you never understood what it meant to love one. The judge slams the gavel. Enough! Order in the court. The silence that follows is suffocating. Olivia gathers her paper slowly, the faintest hint of satisfaction in her eyes. Your Honor, she says, I think the testimony speaks for itself. The prosecution rests. For now, the gavel falls again. Court adjourns for the day, but no one leaves. They just sit there, a shattered family bound together by secrets too heavy to walk away from. As the camera lingers on each face, you can almost hear their thoughts. Guilt, fear, regret. But under it all, a quiet anticipation. Because this was just the beginning. Tomorrow, new witnesses will take the stand. And one of them holds a secret that could end Kody's freedom forever. Sometimes the truth doesn't wait for permission. It just finds a microphone. The next morning, the courthouse feels different, colder, sharper, like the air itself knows something big is about to break. Reporters gather outside, microphones aimed at the grand entrance where Kody Brown arrives in a dark suit, sunglasses hiding the exhaustion etched across his face. The wives enter separately this time. Christine walks in with quiet resolve, Meri with a folder clutched tight to her chest, Janelle composed but pale, and Robyn visibly trembling. Inside, the murmurs never quite fade. Everyone can sense it. Today, something will change. Judge Harris calls the court to order. We will now continue with the testimony. The prosecution may proceed. Olivia Kent stands, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Your Honor, the prosecution calls Meri Brown. Kody's head jerks up. He didn't expect this. Meri rises slowly, walks toward the stand, and takes the oath. Her hands shake slightly, but her voice doesn't. I do. Olivia steps closer. Meri, you mentioned yesterday that you saw Kody sign financial documents. Can you clarify what those were? Meri glances at Kody. They were documents transferring funds from the family trust into a business account that only he had access to. And what was the stated reason for that transfer? He said it was an investment for the family's future. But the next week, I saw receipts for luxury cars, a rental property, and jewelry. Olivia tilts her head. Jewelry. Meri nods, swallowing hard. It wasn't for us. It was for someone else. Gasps ripple through the courtroom. Kody's attorney jumps up. Objection. Speculation. Overruled, the judge says calmly. Olivia presses. Who was it for, Meri? She hesitates, then says it. It was for a woman named Laura, someone Kody was seeing privately while still married to all of us. The room explodes in whispers. Robyn covers her mouth, eyes wide with disbelief. Christine closes her eyes as if she already knew. Kody's fists clench against the table. That's a lie, he spits out. You don't know what you're talking about. Meri's voice trembles, but she doesn't back down. I found the receipts in your office. The necklace had her initials on it. Kody slams his hand on the table. You broke into my office. I was looking for answers, she fires back. You built this family on promises, and all you ever gave us were contracts. Judge Harris pounds the gavel. Enough. Control yourselves. The silence afterward is thick, alive. Everyone is staring at Kody now. The man who always had the last word suddenly looks like he's run out of them. When the truth starts talking, lies start choking. Olivia resumes calmly, Meri, how did you feel when you discovered this? Meri's eyes glisten, destroyed, but mostly free, because it meant I wasn't crazy for feeling like something was wrong. She looks directly at Kody. You made us believe loyalty meant silence, but silence isn't love. It's control. Ethan stands for cross-examination. Meri, you were separated from Kody for some time, correct? Yes. So your information could be outdated? The receipts were dated last year. And isn't it true that you yourself have expressed resentment toward my client? Meri straightens. Yes, I resent the man who made me doubt my worth. Ethan smirks. So this could be revenge? No, she says simply. It's closure. The words land heavier than any gavel. Olivia sits, letting the moment breathe. The judge finally calls a short recess. Outside the courtroom, cameras flash, capturing faces full of tension. Inside, Christine and Janelle whisper quietly. Christine says, It's worse than I thought. Janelle nods. He's unraveling. You can see it. Across the hall, Robyn confronts Kody, voice low and breaking. Is it true? Was there really someone else? He exhales, his voice rough. It was nothing serious. Just someone to talk to. You lied, Robyn whispers. After everything, after all of us defended you, you lied. I needed peace, Kody says, almost pleading. I was drowning in judgment. You weren't drowning, she replies coldly. You were diving. She turns and walks away before he can say another word. Every secret has an expiration date and has just hit 0. The atmosphere is electric as court resumes. The prosecution calls a surprise witness, a financial consultant named Jared Allen. He's nervous but composed, holding a thin folder. Mr. Allen, Olivia begins, what was your role in Kody Brown's financial dealings? I was hired to manage the family trust and track investment allocations. And did Mr. Brown give you specific instructions regarding those funds? Yes. He told me to create shell accounts labeled as business expenses. He said it was to prevent family disputes. The judge raises an eyebrow. Mr. Allen, did he specify what those accounts were actually used for? Personal spending, Jared replies quietly, including a down payment on a private property in Flagstaff under a different name. Whose name? Laura Green. The courtroom freezes, even the air stops moving. Christine's hand flies to her mouth. Robyn starts crying silently. Meri stares at Kody, her expression blank now, the kind of blank that comes after every tear has already fallen. Kody slumps slightly, muttering, This is twisted. They're twisting everything. But everyone knows this isn't twisted. It's truth catching up. Ethan jumps in, his voice loud and sharp. Mr. Allen, isn't it true that these were legitimate business expenses and you're interpreting them based on personal assumptions? Jared shakes his head. No, sir. They were labeled in a way to conceal spending. He said he needed to keep appearances clean. Objection. Overruled, Judge Harris says before Ethan can finish. Proceed. Olivia leans forward. Mr. Allen, did Mr. Brown ever mention the other wives when discussing these funds? Jared nods. He said, and I quote, they don't need to know everything. Transparency kills unity. A collective gasp echoes. Kody sinks lower in his seat. The empire of silence he built was starting to collapse one confession at a time. Judge Harris calls for a brief adjournment. During the break, the wives sit in a quiet room together for the first time in years. The silence between them is thick but not hateful. It's haunted. Christine speaks first. You know what hurts the most? We thought we were protecting a family, but all this time, we were protecting a lie. Janelle nods slowly. I kept telling myself he'd change. That he'd see us again. Robyn sniffs softly. He said he loved me the most. I thought that meant something. Meri looks at her, tired but gentle. That's what he told all of us, Robyn. Different words, same prison. Christine leans back, whispering almost to herself. I don't even know who I was back then. The bailiff opens the door. Ladies, court is reconvening. They arise slowly, together this time. In the courtroom, Olivia is waiting with another file in her hand. Your Honor, we have one last piece of evidence for today, a recording. The judge nods. Proceed. The room falls silent as Olivia presses play. Kody's voice fills the speakers, calm, confident, and damning. If they knew how much I've kept aside, they'd all walk. But sometimes you have to play God to keep a family from falling apart. The silence that follows is suffocating. The wives stare straight ahead, tears streaming down faces that once smiled beside him. Kody stands abruptly, shouting, That was taken out of context. You can't just... Sit down, Mr. Brown, the judge orders sharply. He freezes, breathing hard. The judge turns to Olivia. We'll adjourn for the day. Court will resume tomorrow at 9 a.m. The gavel slams. Everyone rises, but no one moves. Christine finally turns toward Kody. You said you played God, she whispers, her voice trembling. But you forgot one thing. Even gods fall. She walks away without looking back. Robyn lingers for a moment longer, eyes searching his face for a truth that no longer exists. You could have told me, she whispers. You could have told any of us. Kody doesn't reply. His silence is louder than any confession. Sometimes justice doesn't come from the law. It comes from finally being believed. Outside, the media swarm like vultures, headlines already spinning. But inside that courthouse, a different kind of war has begun, one of redemption, of truth, of reckoning. And as the camera fades out on Kody sitting alone at the defense table, one thing becomes painfully clear. Tomorrow's witnesses will do more than expose him. They'll decide whether the man who once preached love ends up losing everything he ever claimed to protect. And the next revelation won't just shake the courtroom, it'll shatter everything that's left of the Brown family name. Day 3 dawns under a heavy gray sky, the kind that makes even the courthouse bricks look tired. There's a strange energy outside, reporters whispering, lenses ready, rumors swirling that today's testimony could break the entire case open. Inside, the courtroom buzzes with anticipation. Kody sits stiffly beside his lawyer, his once confident posture replaced by something quieter, defensive, almost haunted. His wives arrive one by one, avoiding his gaze. Christine walks with fire in her eyes. Meri's calm but cold. Janelle clutches a small notebook. Robyn looks like she hasn't slept. Her mascara smudged, her lips trembling. Judge Harris enters, gavel in hand, and the whispers die instantly. Court is in session. She announces, Prosecution, call your next witness. Olivia Kent stands, poised as ever. The prosecution calls Janelle Brown. Kody's head lifts slightly. Janelle rises, her steps steady, but her expression conflicted. She's not here to destroy him, but she's not here to save him either. She takes the oath, and Olivia begins. Janelle, you've been part of this family for decades. Can you describe your financial role in the Brown household? Janelle nods. I handle budgets, bills, food, day-to-day expenses. Kody managed the big investments. Did he ever consult you before making large withdrawals from the family trust? No. He'd tell us after the fact, sometimes months later. And did you question it? Of course, but questioning Kody meant disrespect. Disrespect meant disloyalty, and disloyalty. She pauses, her eyes flicking toward him, meant punishment. The courtroom murmurs again. Olivia steps closer. What kind of punishment, Janelle? She exhales slowly. Emotional isolation. Silent treatment. He'd call meetings about obedience. He'd say things like, a family divided is a family cursed. But what he meant was, don't challenge me. Olivia lets her words hang. Did you ever feel afraid? Every day, Janelle says softly. Afraid of disappointing him. Afraid of losing what little love was left. She looks up now, her voice trembling but firm. I stayed because I thought it was my duty. But love shouldn't feel like fear. Kody looks visibly shaken, whispering something to Ethan, who scribbles notes but avoids eye contact with his client. Even the strongest love can't survive the weight of silence. Eventually, the truth starts to scream. Ethan rises for cross-examination, his tone slick but tense. Mrs. Brown, you're suggesting emotional abuse, yet you remain married for years. Why? Janelle meets his gaze evenly. Because Faith told me leaving was failure. Because he convinced us that suffering was sacred. Ethan smirks faintly. So you were consenting adults in a religious arrangement? Adults, yes, she says, but not free ones. The audience murmurs again, and Judge Harris warns them to stay quiet. Olivia glances at her watch, then flips a page. Your Honor, before we dismiss this witness, I'd like to introduce Exhibit F, recorded phone logs between Mr. Brown and Mr. Jared Allen, dated March of last year. The clerk brings the file to the judge, who nods. Olivia plays a snippet. Kody's voice fills the courtroom once more. We can't let them access those statements. If they see the withdrawals, they'll revolt. His tone is calm, methodical, too calm. Christine looks sick. Robyn stares down, her shoulders shaking. Kody's lawyer jumps up again. Your Honor, this is entrapment. These recordings were obtained without consent. They were recovered legally through subpoena. Olivia replies coolly. Proceed, the judge says. Kody leans forward, muttering, You're all out to destroy me? Olivia turns to him. No, Mr. Brown. You did that yourself. When a man who preached unity is caught talking about rebellion, his own words become the verdict. Court recesses for lunch, and Kody and Robyn sit together in silence. She finally whispers, Did you ever really love us, or was it all control? He doesn't say anything for a moment. You don't understand. He mutters, I was trying to hold the family together. By lying? She snaps. By hiding everything? He looks up at her with something between anger and desperation. You think they'd have stayed if they knew the truth? I was protecting us. She shakes her head slowly. You weren't protecting us. You were protecting you. She walks away, her tears leaving trails down her cheeks. Outside, Christine leans against the wall, breathing deep. Janelle joins her quietly. He's falling apart, Janelle says. Christine nods. Good. Maybe that's the only way we can finally breathe. They exchange a brief, sad smile. Sometimes healing doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from finally being done. Back inside, the defense is ready to fight back. Ethan stands, straightens his tie, and says, Your Honor, the defense would like to call a character witness, Robyn Brown. The room stirs again. Robyn hesitates, glancing at the others before standing. She looks fragile but determined. She takes the stand. Ethan begins softly. Robyn, you've stood by Mr. Brown through everything. Why? Her eyes glisten. Because I believed in him. I believed he was guided by faith, that he was trying to lead us the right way. And do you still believe that? She swallows hard. I don't know anymore. The courtroom falls silent. Tell us what changed, Ethan prompts. Robyn's lip quivers. When I saw those documents, the accounts, the recordings, it broke something inside me. I kept waiting for him to explain, but every time he spoke, I heard another lie. Do you think he meant to hurt you? Ethan asks. No, she says softly. But he did anyway. Her voice cracks. He didn't realize that love without truth isn't love. It's worship. A single tear slips down her face. Even the judge looks momentarily moved. Kody stares at her, eyes full of disbelief and heartbreak. The worst betrayal isn't from your enemies. It's from the people who stop believing in your story. Olivia rises again. Mrs. Brown, if I may, do you believe your husband should face legal consequences for his actions? Robyn looks down. I believe he needs to face something, maybe not just the law, but himself. The words hang like a ghost in the air. Ethan's defense crumbles in silence. The judge clears her throat. Court will recess until tomorrow. We'll hear final testimonies. Then the gavel slams, and tension fills every inch of the room. As the audience begins to leave, Kody stays seated. His eyes are distant, lost somewhere between guilt and pride. The wives linger at the door, watching him. The man who once bound them together now looks smaller than he's ever been. Meri is the last to leave. She pauses, looks back, and says quietly, "You could have told one truth, Kody. Just one. It might have saved you." He doesn't look up. The truth doesn't need believers. It only needs time. Outside, the wind has picked up, carrying whispers of endings and rebirth. Reporters shout questions, flashes pop, but the family walks past them wordlessly, side by side for the first time in years. In their silence, there is something sacred, not unity born of fear, but survival. Meanwhile, back inside, Kody leans back in his chair. The courtroom's empty now, but echoes of his life still linger. Laughter, arguments, vows made and broken. He stares at the family photo in front of him, a relic from a world that doesn't exist anymore. His lawyer quietly packs up papers and looks at him with something that almost looks like pity. "You should prepare for tomorrow," Ethan says. "They're bringing the forensic accountant." Kody doesn't respond. He just mutters, "They all turned on me." Ethan sighs. "They didn't turn on you, Kody. You just finally stopped pretending they wouldn't." The words hit him harder than any gavel could. Outside the window, thunder rolls, low, distant, but coming closer. Every storm starts with a whisper, but ends with a reckoning. As the lights dim and the day ends, the camera fades out on the courthouse doors closing for the night, a symbol of endings and the faint, fragile hope of something new. Tomorrow, numbers will speak louder than emotions, and every hidden transaction will become a confession. The question isn't whether Kody will lose. It's how much of himself he'll have left when the truth is finally done speaking. And when it does, the Brown family story will never be the same again. The fourth day dawned like a storm before it breaks, with clouds hanging heavy over Flagstaff and the courthouse bathed in a colorless morning light. Cameras clustered outside like vultures waiting for the next wound to open, and the Brown family's minivan rolled up in tense silence. Inside, the air was electric. Today would be the day of numbers, truth carved into spreadsheets and signatures. Kody entered wearing the same dark suit, his once proud hair tied back too neatly, the kind of control that feels like desperation. His eyes darted between his wives, but none of them looked back. Christine sat near the front, her hands folded tight. Janelle clutched a notebook again. Meri was stone-faced, while Robyn stared down, her lips moving silently in prayer. The gavel fell. "Court is in session," Judge Harris declared, her tone firmer now. Perhaps from exhaustion, perhaps from disbelief at what this case had become. Olivia Kent stood with a thick folder under her arm. "Your Honor, the prosecution calls forensic accountant Dana Myers to the stand." A woman in her early 40s stepped forward, confident, composed. She swore and sat and adjusted her glasses. Olivia began, "Miss Myers, please state your credentials." Certified forensic accountant, 20 years of experience specializing in financial fraud and trust misappropriation. Olivia nodded. "Ms. Myers, did you conduct a full audit of the Brown family trust?" "Yes, I did." "And what did you find?" The witness opened her folder. Over a span of 4 years, approximately $483,000 were transferred from the family trust into 3 private accounts. 2 were in Mr. Brown's name, 1 under a corporate shell, and those accounts used for personal spending, including travel, jewelry, vehicles, and payments to an individual identified as Laura Green. Kody shifted in his chair. "Those were business expenses," he muttered. Olivia didn't flinch. "Ms. Myers, did you find any legitimate business transactions connected to those accounts?" "No. In fact, the business in question was never registered." The audience buzzed, whispers spreading like fire. The judge called for order, but the tension refused to die. Olivia leaned in. "Ms. Myers, can you summarize the pattern of activity?" "Yes. Mr. Brown would transfer funds from the trust following deposits of shared income, usually after filming seasons or endorsement payments. He would then distribute smaller amounts to household accounts but retain the majority under the guise of future investments. The spending accelerated after his separation from Christine. How much did the wives personally receive during that period? Averaged between 6 and 8% of total income. A collective gasp filled the courtroom. Christine's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. Janelle's mouth parted slightly in disbelief. Meri looked down, her knuckles white. Numbers don't lie. They just wait for the courage to read them out loud. Ethan sprang to his feet. Ms. Myers, are you suggesting my client's financial management constitutes theft? I'm not suggesting, she returned coolly. I am confirming. Ethan adjusted his tie, cloaking unease with a smile. And yet these women signed financial agreements acknowledging Mr. Brown as head of household, correct? Yes, but those documents didn't authorize secret transfers. Still, he pushed forward, they benefited from the system he created. Myers hesitated. You don't benefit from a system that keeps you blind. A hum ran through the gallery, and even Judge Harris allowed herself the briefest spark of sympathy. Olivia turned to Myers again. Ms. Myers, based on your findings, was their intent to conceal? Without question. Thank you, Olivia said, turning to the jury. Intent, that's the heart of this case. Not mistakes, not poor bookkeeping intent, Kody whispered furiously to Ethan, but the damage was done. The paper trail was louder than any defense. When lies hide behind faith, paper becomes scripture and ink becomes truth. The court recessed briefly, and the wives gathered in the hallway. For the first time, they weren't speaking to reporters or lawyers, they were speaking to each other. Christine said softly, This isn't just money. It's our years, our kids' future, our trust. Janelle nodded. He built everything on us and then bet it all for himself. Meri looked distant, and we let him. We were too scared to see it. Robyn whispered, I wasn't scared. I was in love. Christine turned toward her, gentler than before. So were we. But love doesn't excuse silence. Tears rolled down Robyn's cheeks. I don't know who I'm more angry at, him or myself. Meri took her hand. Maybe both. Sometimes breaking free means finally forgiving yourself for believing the wrong person. When the court reconvened, Olivia announced, The prosecution calls Christine Brown for redirect. Christine rose, her body trembling slightly, but her eyes ablaze. She took the stand again. Christine, Olivia began, you've heard today's findings. What do those numbers mean to you? Christine took a long breath. It means every time he said, or trust me, I should have listened to my own voice instead. It means every dollar was a promise he never intended to keep. She looked at Kody now. It means the man I thought I loved was just really good at pretending. Kody's jaw flexed. That's not fair, Christine. You have no idea what I carried. She shot back. You carried control. That's all you ever wanted. I carried this family. He shouted, standing now, while you all turned on me because I dared to lead. You led us into a lie, she screamed, her voice breaking. You made us fight each other for crumbs of love. The gavel slammed. Order, Judge Harris yelled, but neither of them moved. The years of pain, silence, and resentment all cracked open in that single moment. Christine's tears finally fell. You told me obedience was sacred. You said love was about sacrifice. I gave everything, and you made me believe that wasn't enough? Kody's anger melted into something smaller, sadder. I was trying to be the man God wanted me to be. No, she whispered. You were trying to be God. The silence that followed was almost holy. Every empire ends the same way, with the sound of truth echoing through the ruins. Olivia gently thanked Christine and let her step down. Kody collapsed back into his chair, his face pale. His lawyer leaned over. You need to control your emotions, Ethan hissed quietly. Kody didn't answer. He just stared at the floor. The judge sighed softly, rubbing her temples. We'll break for 15 minutes. During the recess, Robyn stood in the empty courtroom, watching him. You always said we were chosen, she said quietly. He looked up, startled to see her there. We were, he said. Then why does it feel like a curse? She asked. He tried to reach for her hand, but she stepped back. I believed everything you said, Kody. I defended you when the others left, but now I see you were never defending us. You were defending your power. You're twisting this, he muttered, shaking his head. I was trying to protect what we built. You destroyed what we built, she said softly, and you don't even know how to say sorry. She turned and left. For the first time, Kody didn't try to follow. He just sat there, his breathing shallow, the sound of footsteps fading behind him. Some losses don't announce themselves. They just leave you sitting alone in the wreckage. The courtroom opened again, and Olivia closed her folder. Your Honor, the prosecution rests. The evidence is complete. Ethan stood immediately. Then, Your Honor, the defense would like to recall Mr. Kody Brown. The room tensed again. Kody made his way to the stand slowly, his steps heavy. He raised his hand for the oath, his voice cracking slightly as he said, "I do." Ethan's tone softened. "Mr. Brown, people have said terrible things about you over the past few days. What do you want the court to understand?" Kody exhaled shakily. "That I love my family, that everything I did for them. I didn't steal. I redistributed funds to protect our future. Then why hide it?" Olivia cut in sharply. He glared at her. "Because they never understood responsibility. They wanted equality, but someone had to lead. Someone had to make the hard calls." "And who decided that someone was you?" she asked coldly. He hesitated. "It was my role." "Appointed by who?" "By faith," he said, almost pleading. "By God." The courtroom fell silent. The weight of his words hung heavy, a man trying to justify his sins with scripture. Olivia stepped forward slowly. "Mr. Brown, faith doesn't exempt you from the law, and love doesn't excuse control. You say you led your family out of duty, but isn't it true you were really leading them away from accountability?" Kody's voice broke. "They stopped believing in me." "Maybe," she said softly, "because you stopped believing in them." He blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. For a brief moment, he wasn't the confident patriarch. He was just a man watching everything he built crumble in front of him. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Brown, I'll remind you that tomorrow we move to closing arguments. You'll have one final opportunity to speak for yourself then." She struck the gavel. Court adjourned. Kody stepped down, but the weight of the world seemed to stay on his shoulders. The wives stood near the back, their faces a mix of sorrow and relief. As he passed them, Christine whispered, "Tomorrow isn't just your judgment day, Kody. It's ours too." He stopped but didn't turn around. "I never wanted this," he murmured. "Meri?" He answered softly, "Then you shouldn't have built it on lies." The truth doesn't punish, it reveals who deserves redemption and who doesn't. Outside, the storm finally broke. Rain poured down in sheets as the courthouse emptied, the sound mixing with camera clicks and reporters shouting questions that no one answered. Inside, the lights dimmed slowly, leaving only the echo of footsteps and the ghost of a family that once believed they could defy the world. But tomorrow, no belief, no faith, no love could protect what comes next, because the verdict wasn't about law anymore, it was about consequence, and consequence always collects its due. Tomorrow, justice wouldn't ask for forgiveness, it would take it. The final day of testimony began with a kind of silence that didn't feel like peace. It felt like a held breath before a scream. The courthouse was crowded, yet eerily quiet, the hum of whispered tension stretching through every corner. Cameras waited outside like predators smelling blood, but inside it was colder, heavier. Kody Brown sat at the defense table, staring straight ahead. He looked older now, his posture bent by something that went deeper than fatigue. Across the aisle sat his wives or former wives, perhaps each of them carrying different kinds of pain on their faces. Christine's eyes were raw but steady. Janelle's jaw was locked, her hand gripping a small pendant in her lap. Robyn looked shattered, mascara dried along her cheekbones, while Meri looked like she had already accepted the ending that was coming. The judge entered, and the sound of the gavel cracked the air like thunder. This court is now in session for closing arguments. Olivia Kent, the prosecution attorney, stood. Her voice was soft but filled with steel. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case has never been about polygamy. It's about deception, about control, about a man who used faith and love to build a kingdom that served only him." She paced slowly in front of the jury box. "We've seen the evidence. Financial transfers hidden from his family, emotional coercion disguised as divine leadership, and the slow erasure of each wife's voice until silence became the only way to survive." She stopped and turned, her gaze sweeping across the room. "This isn't just about money. It's about power, the kind of power that hides behind words like destiny and duty. Mr. Brown didn't lead his family. He ruled them." She glanced at the wives, her tone softening. They believed him because they wanted to believe love could conquer doubt. But love without truth is just obedience, and obedience without choice is control. "That tea." Kody shifted, jaw tight. Olivia's voice dropped lower. For years he told these women they were chosen, that their sacrifices made them holy. But holiness doesn't demand submission. It demands honesty. And when honesty came knocking, he locked the door. She took a deep breath. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to remember the faces you've seen in this courtroom. Remember the tears, the shame, the silence. Because when a man uses faith as a weapon, the victims aren't just hearts, they're identities. She turned to the jury one last time. Don't let this story end with silence. Let it end with truth. She nodded. The prosecution rests. Sometimes the quiet after truth is louder than any lie ever spoken. Ethan Reynolds, the defense attorney, rose slowly, buttoning his suit jacket. His expression was somber, his tone calculatedly calm. Ladies and gentlemen, my learned colleague has painted a picture of my client as a villain. But let's remember, Kody Brown never asked for fame. He never asked for this stage. He opened his life to the world to show his faith, his family, his love. What happened afterward? Cameras turned family disagreements into entertainment. Editors turned devotion into drama. And now his own loved ones sit here accusing him of betrayal. He gestured toward Kody. Mr. Brown is not a perfect man, but he is a man who truly believed that he was following God's will. Every decision he made, every hard call was a call of faith, not malice. He stepped closer to the jury, lowering his voice. Is it so hard to imagine that a man could lose his way under the weight of being everyone's provider, everyone's husband, everyone's leader? That sometimes leadership doesn't look like cruelty, it just looks like confusion. He paused for effect. The prosecution wants you to believe this was control, but faith-based families often operate differently, and whether you agree with that or not, difference isn't a crime. He turned to Christine, then to Robyn. Love isn't a perfect contract. It's messy, complicated, full of regret, but regret doesn't equal guilt. His voice softened. Maybe what we're really seeing here is a family that broke under the pressure of trying to be extraordinary in a world that never understood them. He looked back at Kody. Don't condemn a man for being human. Ethan sat down, and for a long moment no one spoke. The hardest truth to face is the one that makes you pity the person you hate. The judge nodded slowly. Mr. Brown, before we move to deliberation, the court will allow you to speak on your own behalf. The courtroom seemed to inhale as Kody rose. His steps were slow, heavy, the weight of his own legacy pressing down. He stood behind the witness podium, eyes red-rimmed, voice trembling slightly. I've heard a lot these past few days, he began. Things I didn't want to hear. Things I didn't want to believe. Maybe I was wrong in how I handled things. Maybe I pushed too hard. Maybe I thought I was protecting everyone when I was really protecting myself. He looked at Christine. I loved you. I loved all of you. I thought love meant keeping the family together, no matter what. I thought if I could lead you, I could save you from the pain of the world. But maybe. I became the pain. His voice cracked. I didn't steal from you. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just didn't know how to stop being the man everyone expected me to be. His words hung heavy in the air, the first sound of true vulnerability. Christine's eyes softened, but she said nothing. Janelle blinked hard, fighting tears. Meri turned away. Robyn broke down completely, covering her mouth to muffle sobs. The judge's expression didn't change, but the jury could feel it. This wasn't just a legal defense anymore, it was confession. Even the guilty can sound holy when they finally tell the truth. The jury was dismissed for deliberation, and hours bled away like slow rain. Outside, the media screamed questions, but inside, silence ruled again. The wives sat together, not as allies, but as survivors. Do you think he meant it? Robyn whispered. Christine sighed. He meant it the way he always does. Enough to sound sorry, but not enough to change. Meri spoke softly. Maybe change isn't what this is about anymore. Maybe it's just about ending it. Janelle looked toward the courtroom doors. Ending it doesn't mean healing it. The room fell quiet again. Then the doors opened. The jury was back. Everyone stood. The foreperson handed the paper to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. The tension was suffocating. In the matter of financial fraud and coercion within the family trust, the judge read, "We, the jury, find the defendant Kody Brown." The pause stretched long enough to make hearts skip. Guilty of financial misconduct, but not guilty of coercive abuse. A collective murmur swept the courtroom. Christine closed her eyes, a tear slipping free. Janelle exhaled sharply. Robyn wept into her hands. Meri just stared ahead, unblinking. Kody didn't move. The judge continued, "Sentencing will be determined at a later date. Mr. Brown is ordered to repay restitution to the family trust and is barred from managing joint assets. The gavel fell. The sound was final. It echoed like a door slamming shut. Kody turned, his face unreadable, then met Christine's gaze. "Is this what you wanted?" he whispered. She hesitated, her voice trembling but steady. "No, I wanted the truth. This was just the cost of it." Sometimes justice doesn't feel like victory, just finally stopping the bleeding. The courtroom emptied slowly. Reporters shouted, flashes burst, and the family scattered like the ashes of what once was. Outside, Christine and Janelle stood beneath the gray sky. "It's over," Janelle said quietly. "No," Christine replied. "It's just the part where we start over." Robyn approached them, her face swollen from crying. "I don't know how to live without him." Christine touched her shoulder gently. "You don't have to know. You just start living, and the rest follows." Behind them, Meri lingered near the courthouse doors, watching Kody being escorted out. He stopped for a moment, turned back to her, and for the first time in years, his eyes looked human. Broken, small, maybe even sorry. She gave a faint nod, nothing more, and turned away. The rain began again, washing down the courthouse steps. Voices rose, cameras clicked, but the family didn't look back. The end of control isn't chaos, it's freedom, learning how to breathe again. That night, as news blasted headlines about the sister-wives trial verdict, Christine sat by her window, sipping tea, the world quiet around her. In the reflection of the glass, she saw her younger self, the woman who believed that faith and love were enough to hold a family together. She smiled sadly. "We were all just trying to be good," she whispered. Her phone buzzed, a message from Janelle. "We made it through." Christine typed back, "Not yet, but we're finally walking in the right direction." Outside, the wind carried the faintest echo of laughter, maybe memory, maybe hope. Either way, it was enough. And though the story had reached its verdict, something deeper had just begun. The rebuilding of lives that no longer needed permission to exist. Because when truth finally wins, love doesn't die. It just learns how to live honestly. The days after the verdict felt like an aftershock that refused to fade. The courthouse was silent now. The media frenzy had cooled, but for the Browns, the echoes of judgment still clung to everything. The family splintered into fragments, each wife drifting into her own world, unsure how to live without the structure that had defined them for decades. Christine drove back to Utah, her car packed with boxes and silence. Every mile away from Flagstaff felt like peeling away layers of a life that no longer fit. The desert stretched wide and empty, but for the first time, that emptiness felt like possibility. She moved into a small rental house, quiet, modest, with sunlight that poured through the windows like a promise. Yet at night, when the lights dimmed, memories came crawling back. The dinners where laughter masked resentment, the family meetings where every smile was a performance, and the moments she'd once believed were holy. Freedom has a price, and sometimes it's the sound of your own voice echoing in a room too quiet to comfort you. Meanwhile, Janelle stayed in Flagstaff, too practical to run, too stubborn to crumble. She threw herself into work, her hands constantly moving, paperwork, bills, logistics, anything to stop her mind from wandering to what she'd lost. But it wasn't Kody she missed. It was the illusion of purpose, being part of something bigger, even if it was broken. She met Christine for coffee one morning weeks later. "You look lighter," Janelle said with a small smile. Christine laughed softly. "I feel lighter. Scared, but lighter." They sat in silence for a while, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. Then Janelle said, "Do you think he'll ever say sorry?" Christine stirred her coffee, eyes distant. "He already did." "Just not in words," Janelle frowned. "You think that's enough?" Christine shook her head. "No, but it's all he's capable of." They both laughed, not from humor, but from exhaustion. Sometimes closure doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from realizing you don't need it anymore. Robyn, on the other hand, couldn't stop replaying the trial in her mind. Every question, every accusation, every tear. She stayed with her children in the house that once felt full, now echoing with the ghosts of arguments and dreams. She still loved him. That was the hardest part. Even after the lies, the manipulation, the fall, she couldn't just switch it off. Love, when built on faith, doesn't die. It decays slowly, like something sacred left in the sun too long. Late at night, she'd look at his old photos. The smile that once made her feel chosen now felt like a curse. She whispered to herself, "He didn't mean to hurt us." And then another voice inside her, the one that had grown louder during the trial, she whispered back, "He just didn't care enough not to." Tears blurred her vision. For the first time, she didn't wipe them away. You can't heal what you keep defending. Meri had gone quiet, as if she'd folded herself into silence to survive. She rented a small cabin outside Sedona, far from the noise. Her days were slow, tending to plants, reading, walking by the river. She had spent so many years fighting to be seen that now invisibility felt like peace. One afternoon, she found an old photo of the whole family, smiling, perfect, oblivious. She stared at it for a long time before finally burning it in the fire pit. The flames danced, consuming the image of a life she no longer recognized. "Goodbye," she whispered, not to them, but to the version of herself who had needed their validation. The wind carried away the ashes, and with them, something inside her loosened. Letting go isn't an act of loss, it's an act of reclaiming your own story. Meanwhile, Kody's world shrank into something unrecognizable. He lived alone now, in a rental house miles from anyone. No cameras, no wives, no structure to hide behind. The days bled together. Empty coffee cups, unpaid bills, unopened mail from lawyers. He kept expecting someone to call to need him, to prove he still mattered, but no one did. When he finally ventured out for groceries one day, people whispered. Some looked at him with pity, others with judgment. The man who once boasted of leading a family of faith was now just another face in the aisles of obscurity. He started talking to himself more. "They never understood," he muttered while fixing breakfast. I tried to hold them together. He'd say it again and again, like repetition could rewrite the truth. At night, he'd sit by the window, staring at the moonlight spilling across the floor. He remembered the laughter, not the arguments, not the tears, but the rare moments when everything felt right. Family dinners, children playing, Robyn's smile, Christine's warmth, Janelle's steadiness, Meri's loyalty. He remembered how it used to feel to be loved without suspicion. But memory is cruel. It always brings regret with it. He whispered, "What did I do?" The silence answered back, "Everything." The hardest punishment isn't prison or debt. It's living long enough to understand what you destroyed. Months passed and the world moved on. The headlines faded, the cameras stopped following, and people found new scandals to consume. But for the Browns, the aftermath was a quiet kind of rebirth. Christine started counseling for women leaving fundamentalist communities. Her story became strength for others. She spoke at small events, her voice shaky at first, but growing more confident each time. One evening, a woman approached her after a talk and said, "You made me realize I'm not crazy for wanting more." Christine smiled softly. "You're not crazy. You're just waking up that night," she cried, not from pain, but from pride. Janelle launched a small business consulting for women-owned startups, her sense of purpose finally unshackled from her old life. She learned to laugh again, genuinely this time. Robyn slowly began attending therapy, learning to untangle love from dependency. It wasn't easy. Some nights she still whispered prayers for Kody, hoping he'd find peace, even if it wasn't with her. And Meri, she started writing. Her journal turned into essays, and her essays began reaching others. She never mentioned names, but every word carried the quiet strength of someone who'd walked through fire and found herself on the other side. Healing doesn't look like triumph. It's surviving the day you thought you couldn't. Then one afternoon, almost a year after the trial, fate decided they weren't finished yet. Kody showed up unannounced at Christine's counseling event. He stood at the back of the hall, unnoticed until she spotted him mid-speech. For a moment, her voice faltered. He looked thinner, older, a man erased by his own story. When the event ended, she approached him cautiously. "What are you doing here?" she asked. He swallowed hard. "I wanted to hear you, to see what you've become." "Why?" she asked. "Because I needed to know that you're okay," he said quietly. She stared at him, studying his face for traces of the man she once loved. "You could have just asked?" He nodded, eyes glistening. "I didn't think I had the right to," she sighed. "You don't need my forgiveness, Kody. You need your own." He blinked, tears breaking free. "How do I get that?" she said softly. "By finally being honest, or die with yourself." They stood there in silence, two people bound by history but freed by distance. Then she turned to leave. As she walked away, he called out, "Christine, thank you." She paused, smiled faintly, and replied, "Good luck." Closure isn't about getting answers. It's about no longer needing them. That night, Kody drove home alone, but something had shifted. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel angry, just empty. And in that emptiness, a fragile kind of peace. He picked up a pen and a notebook and began to write. To my family, he started, I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope one day, when the dust settles, you'll know I loved you, even if I never knew how to show it. Across town, Christine looked at the stars outside her window, whispering a prayer not for reconciliation but for peace, for all of them. And as the wind rustled the trees, it felt as if the universe itself exhaled, finally letting the story rest. Sometimes, the real ending isn't justice or redemption. It's the quiet moment when everyone finally stops running from the truth. A year and a half after the verdict, the Brown family existed like separate islands in the same vast ocean of memory, close enough to see each other, but far enough that the waves between them kept them apart. Time had dulled the noise, but not the weight of what had happened. Kody lived quietly now in northern Arizona, away from the public eye, his days simple and mostly wordless. No cameras, no wives, no grand declarations, just a man and his silence. He grew a beard, learned to cook for one, and spent long hours walking the dirt trails near his home, replaying every choice that had led him here. Sometimes he saw Christine's face in the desert light, sometimes Robyn's tears, sometimes the cold disapproval in Meri's eyes. The past wasn't gone. It had simply stopped shouting and started whispering. He was writing a book now, or at least trying to, not to defend himself, but to make sense of what he'd done. Faith, Family, and Failure, he titled it. Each chapter was an apology written to someone who might never read it. He didn't expect forgiveness. He only wanted to leave behind something honest. Some men find their redemption in churches. Others in the quiet act of admitting they were wrong. Christine, on her part, had started to live again. Her counseling was getting busier, and she'd open a small center in Salt Lake City for women leaving polygamous communities. The walls were warm colors, the air always faintly scented with vanilla candles. She'd never imagined herself a leader, but every woman who walked through those doors saw in her a reflection of survival. She still had bad days when she questioned if she'd done the right thing by airing their pain in public, but those moments didn't control her anymore. She'd learned that healing wasn't about erasing scars, it was about wearing them without shame. One day, she got a letter in the mail, the handwriting shaky but familiar. It was from Kody. Her heart thudded as she read the first line. I don't know if you'll read this, but I wanted to thank you for saving me from myself. The letter went on for pages, part confession, part reflection. He admitted to his ego, to the pride that blinded him, to the way control had become his language of love. It wasn't an excuse, but it was raw in a way he'd never been before. Christine read it twice, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Then she folded it neatly, placed it in a drawer, and whispered, "That's enough." She didn't need to respond. The act of him finally seeing himself was the closure she hadn't known she was waiting for. Forgiveness isn't always spoken aloud. Sometimes it's just the moment you stop needing revenge. Meanwhile, Janelle had set her life into motion traveling, exploring, rebuilding. Her consulting business was thriving, but she found a deeper fulfillment in solitude. She bought an RV and spent months driving through national parks, journaling about resilience and identity. One evening, parked near Zion, she recorded a video for her small online following, speaking candidly about change. We spend so much of our lives building around someone else's idea of happiness, she said softly. But when that collapses, you realize freedom isn't about starting over. It's about finally living as yourself. The video went viral in the self-help community, and thousands of women wrote to her, saying she had given them courage to leave toxic relationships, rigid belief systems, and cycles of guilt. Janelle smiled when she read those messages. Maybe, she thought, we were meant to fall apart so others could find their way out. Sometimes the story you survive becomes the map for someone else's escape. Robyn's road was harder. She had loved Kody with a loyalty that had consumed her, and when the foundation of that love collapsed, she didn't know how to exist without him. Therapy helped, bit by bit. She began to understand that devotion without boundaries isn't love, it's surrender. She began to volunteer at a local women's shelter, helping other women navigate emotional manipulation. It was strange. Giving advice, she was still trying to believe herself. One afternoon, she got a call from Kody. His voice was quiet, hesitant. I didn't think you'd pick up, he said. I almost didn't, she replied, her tone cautious. I wanted to say thank you, he continued, for standing by me when no one else would. I know that loyalty hurt you more than it helped. Robyn closed her eyes. It did, she whispered, but I chose it, and now I'm choosing something else. He nodded on the other end. I hope you're happy. I'm getting there, she said softly, and I hope you find peace. When the call ended, she sat in silence for a long time, the weight of old love and new strength balancing in her chest. Love doesn't die. It evolves into the lesson you were meant to learn. Meri's transformation was quieter, but no less powerful. Her writing had evolved into a published memoir called The Space Between Us, exploring the intersection of faith, identity, and independence. It wasn't vindictive. It was reflective, filled with empathy, even for Kody. Critics called it hauntingly beautiful, and for the first time, Meri's story belonged entirely to her. She did a small book signing in Phoenix one evening, and to her surprise, Robyn showed up. The two women hadn't spoken since the trial. There was a long, awkward pause before Robyn finally said, I read your book. It hurt, but it was beautiful. Meri smiled softly. Thank you. I didn't write it to hurt anyone. I wrote it to stop hurting myself. Robyn nodded, her eyes glistening. Maybe one day we'll all sit down again, not to fix the past, just to talk. Meri's voice was gentle. Maybe one day. Healing takes time. They hugged briefly, awkward but real, and for a fleeting second, the old sisterhood flickered again. Not the illusion of unity, but the shared understanding of women who had survived the same storm. The strongest bonds aren't unbreakable. They're the ones that heal after breaking. Meanwhile, Kody's book was nearing completion. He had poured his soul into it, confronting parts of himself he had long buried beneath faith and pride. Late one night, he wrote the final lines. I once thought leadership meant control. I thought love was obedience and faith was power. But I see now it was all fear. And fear doesn't build families. It only builds cages. He closed the notebook and exhaled. For the first time in years, he slept peacefully. Months later, his book quietly released online. It didn't make headlines, but it found readers, men struggling with control, families fractured by belief. Some praised his honesty, others dismissed it as too late. But for Kody, it wasn't about public redemption. It was about finally saying the truth out loud, even if no one was listening. He sent a copy to each of his wives, no note attached, just a gesture. Christine left it on her shelf. Janelle read it by a campfire one night and cried. Robyn underlined passages that mirrored her own pain. Meri used one quote as an opening epigraph for her next essay. Power means nothing without humility. Each of them, in their own way, accepted the peace offering. When you stop defending the past, you finally make space for a future that doesn't hurt to imagine. A few months later, fate brought them together one last time at a family event for one of their adult children's weddings. The venue was small, outdoors, with strings of lights weaving through the trees. The atmosphere was cautious but warm. Kody arrived quietly, unsure of how welcome he was. But when his children hugged him, something inside him cracked open. Christine greeted him with a polite smile. Janelle offered a firm nod. Meri simply said, Hello, Kody. Robyn stayed near the back, eyes soft, cautious. The ceremony was beautiful, simple, full of laughter and nostalgia. And as they all stood together for a group photo, an odd sense of peace settled over them. They weren't a family as they once were, but in that moment, they were something else, something real, imperfect but honest. Afterward, as the guests began to leave, Kody approached the four women. I don't deserve this, he said quietly. Christine looked at him. You don't have to deserve peace to start feeling it. He smiled faintly. Thank you. For what? She asked. For not hating me? He said. She shrugged gently. I did. For a long time. But hate gets heavy after a while. They all stood in silence, the night air thick with unspoken history. Then Meri said softly, Maybe this is what forgiveness looks like. Not reunion, just release. Kody nodded, his eyes glistening. I'll take that. As they parted ways, each going their separate direction under the soft glow of the wedding lights, a strange calm washed over everyone. It wasn't a perfect ending, just a human one, the kind where everyone carries both love and regret, and somehow that's enough. Sometimes the greatest miracle isn't reconciliation, it's learning to coexist with what's broken and still finding beauty in it. The years that followed brought a kind of quiet the Browns had never known, a stillness that settled after decades of chaos, love, betrayal, and faith. The media had long moved on. Their faces no longer filled headlines or talk shows. But for those who had once watched every episode, every tear, and every tense smile, whispers of what had become of the sister wives still lingered online. It was a strange kind of legacy, a family once defined by unity through plural love, now remembered for how spectacularly it had all fallen apart. Yet, behind that public image, something unexpected was happening. The story didn't end in that courtroom, it just changed shape. Christine's Women's Center had grown into a movement, a quiet revolution of independence. She had become a national speaker, traveling across states to share her story not as scandal, but as survival. Her talks were raw and real. I thought I was saving my marriage, she'd tell rooms of women, her voice strong. But really, I was saving myself. Each word carried the weight of years she'd once spent apologizing for her dreams. She met new people, some who loved her, some who challenged her, but she kept her boundaries firm. Trust was earned now, not given away. Late one night after a speaking event, she found herself watching old footage online, the Sister Wives episodes, the laughter, the chaos, the pretending. She didn't cry. She just smiled softly and whispered, "We tried." The past isn't a prison. When you stop fighting to rewrite it, it becomes a teacher. Janelle, ever the steady one, had turned her RV life into a book, a travel memoir titled Road to Myself. It was a story of rediscovery, of solitude, of learning to live without a script. Readers loved her honesty. She didn't glorify the pain, she just told it straight. When the camera stopped, she wrote, "I thought I'd lost my story. Turns out it was just beginning." The book became a quiet bestseller, inspiring countless women who had built their lives around someone else's vision. On one of her solo trips, she stopped at a small diner in Utah, and there she ran into Robyn. Neither of them expected it. The first few seconds were stiff, awkward. Then Robyn smiled faintly and said, "You look free." Janelle chuckled, "You look lighter too." They sat together for hours, sipping coffee, reminiscing, not about the fights or the betrayals, but about the laughter, the children, the moments that weren't for television. They laughed like old friends who'd finally forgiven the storm that had drowned them both. As they hugged goodbye, Robyn whispered, "We were never enemies." Just Lost Janelle nodded. Lost, but found again. Even broken families can leave behind whole hearts if they choose compassion over pride. Robyn had found her path too, though it was quieter than the others. She kept to herself, raising her kids, working at a small counseling office, guiding women through heartbreak and recovery. The irony wasn't lost on her. "Maybe I was meant to understand pain this way," she once told her therapist, to sit with women who feel invisible and say, "Me too." Every once in a while, she'd get letters from viewers, some hateful, some kind. She didn't respond to most, but there was one letter she kept. It was from a woman who wrote, "I used to hate you. Now I see myself in you. Thank you for showing that love doesn't always mean staying." Robyn folded the letter neatly and placed it in her journal. "Maybe," she whispered, "that's enough redemption. When people see themselves in your story, your pain stops being wasted. It becomes a bridge." As for Meri, her second book had gone on to win awards. She hosted retreats for women who wanted to rebuild after religious trauma. Her voice, once shaky and unsure, was now confident, calm, and deeply grounded. During an interview, when asked if she missed her old life, she smiled wistfully and said, "No. I honor it. Every part of it. Because without that chapter, I wouldn't know the woman I am now." The audience applauded, but Meri didn't need their validation anymore. After the show, as she packed up her notes, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror, older, wiser, free. For the first time, she didn't flinch at her reflection. Healing isn't about going back to who you were, it's about becoming who you needed all along. And then there was Kody. The man who once commanded every room now lived quietly on a small ranch outside Sedona. The desert had become his confessional. He took care of horses, planted fruit trees, and volunteered at a men's rehabilitation program. Few recognized him anymore, and that was fine by him. His book hadn't sold much, but it had changed him. He had stopped running from the truth. He'd even started attending Christine's public talks anonymously, sitting quietly in the back, watching the woman he once tried to control now stand as a symbol of strength. One evening, After a talk ended, Christine caught sight of him leaving. She didn't call out. She just smiled. Because she didn't need an apology anymore. She'd already moved beyond the need for one. That night, Kody stood on his porch, watching the sun sink behind the red cliffs, and whispered, they were right to leave. It wasn't self-pity. It was peace. For the first time, he understood love as something you give without owning. Real growth isn't loud. It's the quiet acceptance that comes when your ego finally bows to truth. Years later, their children decided to film a reunion documentary. Not a reality show this time, but something raw, reflective, a look back at what the sister wives' legacy truly meant. The producers asked all 5 adults if they'd participate. To everyone's surprise, they all said yes. The opening shot was simple. 5 chairs in a circle, the old cast sitting together again. No glam, no makeup, no drama, just honesty. The first few minutes were tense, but then laughter began to slip through. Christine spoke first. You know, for all the pain, we did something no one else could have done. We showed the world everything. Our love, our mess, our breaking. Janelle nodded. And maybe that's why it mattered. Robyn added quietly, because people saw us fail, and they realized they weren't alone. Meri smiled. Failure isn't the opposite of faith. It's part of it. All eyes turned to Kody. He hesitated, then said softly, I thought I was building a kingdom. But all I built were walls. And you all had the courage to climb out. Silence fell for a moment. Heavy, emotional. Then Christine reached out her hand, resting it on the armrest between them. We all climbed out, Kody. Even you. When the people you hurt start seeing your humanity again, you finally started to change. The reunion aired quietly but reached millions online. People cried, rewatched, debated, and reflected. But more importantly, it made others think about love, control, and faith in ways that went deeper than entertainment. The story had transformed from spectacle to testimony. For the Browns, it wasn't about reclaiming fame, it was about reclaiming truth. As the sun started setting behind the desert horizon in the final scene, Christine narrated the final words. We started this journey believing love could multiply endlessly. What we learned is that love only multiplies when there's freedom, and freedom starts with honesty. The camera lingered on their faces, older, weathered, but calm. For a moment, you could almost see the family they once were, not perfect, not whole, but deeply human. The screen faded to black, the music swelling, a gentle, haunting piano theme. The credits rolled, but one final quote appeared in white letters against the dark. Some stories don't end. They just learn how to live differently. Of course, because in the end, it wasn't about polygamy or faith or betrayal. It was about people learning that love, no matter how many hearts it touches, cannot survive without truth. And if you've made it this far, I want to ask you something. Do you believe that people who once broke each other can ever truly find peace again? Let me know in the comments below, because sometimes forgiveness isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning of a new one, and before a single word more can be said, the gavel slams.